only 21% of employees are engaged at their work, and that results in nearly $8 trillion in lost productivity. The Gallup State of the Global Workplace report shows how business critical finding and retaining the right talent is for organisations.
What does change though, however, is the tactics that you use to implement that strategy. So for us, from a social chain perspective, that world of social media platforms was ever changing. Because then when you start seeing that, you'll see an intern or one of the graduates then to go, oh, well actually, that's acceptable. I can then try more things.
Yeah.
And then it starts to pick up. And one of the biggest things is the leadership team, myself included now in where we are, being open and vulnerable and saying, we tried this didn't work. These were the reasons why we think it didn't work. And then this is now what we're going to do as a byproduct of that.
Yeah. There's an element of kind of Simon Sinek's infinite game here, isn't there? Which is
So
like,
true.
absolutely, have this purpose that's kind of bigger than yourself, but it isn't also doesn't have an end to it. If you become the biggest company, it's like, well, okay, what next? Hi, welcome back to the Employer Content Marketing Pod. I'm delighted to have Alex Ayin here today with me. Alex has worked at a number of agencies in leadership positions, in particular Social Chain, where he was worked very, very closely with someone you might know, Steve Bartlett. And more recently, Alex works at Wiser. So we're going to talk about how the state of the market in terms of agencies and how agencies need to adapt and evolve to grow their business. So let's get on with the chat. Hey Alex, how you doing?
Good, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Made it through the melting London.
Very hot day.
Oh my goodness, yeah. But it's good to get the legs out for the podcast, definitely.
Exactly, yeah.
But thanks for joining. Let's just start off by telling us a bit about yourself.
So work-wise, I am on the group leadership team of a company called Wiser.
Okay.
We combine creative and recruitment.
Yeah.
I would say that's our USP. So we help organisations attract and then retain some of their best talent.
Right.
I've been in the agency/startup scale-up space for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Hated the corporate life. Got in a lot of trouble in the corporate world. Started off my career at Virgin, and then after 2 years realised that wasn't for me. Dropped out.
Yeah.
And some of my friends at the time were building a company in social media, which was Social Chain.
Okay. Yeah.
So did that for 4 or 5 years. We IPO'd in 2019. Everyone's then gone on to do other things since then. Steve, obviously, as you'll know, the fellow podcaster, Steve's podcast is doing really well. Yeah. Dom's doing great in the investment space, and I've moved into the employee branding creative world.
Nice.
Outside of that, I've got 2 kids. Keeps me up.
Yeah, congrats, but good luck.
Yeah. We did have 2 under 2, but now they're a little bit older, which is slightly easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, so I thought, look, you've worked in a number of companies, and I think, that thing about Wiser and the model you're taking is really interesting. We'll maybe touch on that a bit later on.
Yeah.
So let's kind of start off with, people talk about how marketing is changing. Yeah. Marketing is always in a constant state of change. And I think often that could be said so much without there actually being any kind of meaning to it. It's like, hang on a minute, what does that actually mean? So in kind of your viewpoint, what is it that is what is the constant change in marketing that you see and experience?
The way I always look at marketing, anything that we do is twofold. First and foremost, I don't think the fundamentals change significantly. So understanding your target market, who you're trying to speak to, what are their desires, what's going to relate to them as a person, and building a strategy around that. I think that always stays to somewhat very consistent.
Yeah.
What does change though, however, is the tactics that you use to implement that strategy. So for us, from a social chain perspective, that world of social media platforms was ever changing. So there was a new trend, there was a new feature that was released, and the platforms themselves would give you sizable increase in your reach, in your engagement figures, if you were to capitalize in a short time period on those changes, because ultimately they want to test them out. They want people to use the new features that they've produced.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say when people say about marketing's always changing, it is to a certain extent because the framework, so the platforms and the media that goes around it is always changing. New platforms, TikTok's just come on the scene. I say just come on the scene, is now one of the biggest players in the world from a content perspective.
Yeah, goodness, yeah.
So trying to stay ahead of what that looks like and get information about what those are, and then having a culture within your marketing team where people aren't afraid to test things, fail sometimes. That was a big mantra everywhere that I've been, is the most successful teams are the ones that are real about failure. And welcome it in terms of a learning message. What does that data then tell us about our strategy? Should we be changing something? Should we try something new? So yeah, that's my take anyway. Because you hear it all the time, don't you, marketing? It's changing. Like, how do you keep up? It's quite stressful.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And I suppose actually, I mean, one thing, I'm not surprised you say what you say, because you're saying that when you worked at Virgin, you say you're not the corporate person. I think that very much is in line with your attitude of failing. And there is that danger of failing, and the whole thing about we lose that sense of creativity and we have this fear of failure as we grow up, don't we? As kids, we're not fussed about it. Our kids will just try something and go with it. So I'm now stealing a Sir Kenneth Robinson TED Talk speech about schools, killing creativity, but it's absolutely true.
What you're saying there about still like an artist is the one that we always go back to. Like, it's important to steal great ideas. There's no, I don't think there's any real, well, there probably is to some degree some original ideas or some thoughts, but usually they're like an adaptation of something that's been worked on before, or two ideas or three ideas merging together into something new. And so we quite encourage that, to try and get as many points and information and inspiration from the outside world, different books, podcasts, experiences, to then influence your marketing ideas. And what you said about Virgin was so true. There's more on the line. When you become a company with 1,000 employees, 10,000 employees, especially if you're floated on the stock exchange, you've got more at risk. You've got people looking at you, scrutinising you. Every decision matters more. Whereas when you're a scale-up, you are allowed, or it's more acceptable to fail in that way. And I think that's my personality type's an ENFJ. It's a great thing to do, just to understand yourself a bit more. I did that recently, and it makes you understand a lot of why you act and are motivated as a human.
Well, I think it's but as the bigger you get, you still need to kind of still retain that element of practice, trying again, because it's not about trying something and if it doesn't work, you absolutely stop doing something, you're just adapting it over time. So how do companies actually kind of still keep that element of startup mentality as they get bigger?
It's one of the biggest cultural shifts, I think, from organisations which we're now helping, is how you can embed that value in particular within processes. So, for example, if somebody does fail at something, how can you communicate that to the wider business so that they're then seen as it's a learning experience? And this has happened, it didn't go well, but we learnt this in like a town hall where everyone's there, or in like a company newsletter or e-shop. Because then when you start seeing that, you'll see an intern or one of the graduates then to go, oh, well, actually, that's acceptable. I can then try more things. And then it starts to pick up. And one of the biggest things is the leadership team, myself included now in where we are, being open and vulnerable and saying, we tried this didn't work. These were the reasons why we think it didn't work. And then this is now what we're going to do as a byproduct of that. And then if you are vulnerable, Brené Brown's probably the best kind of thought leader in this space, is showing those vulnerabilities, which is something that when you're put into a leadership role in a scale-up, you feel like you should get everything right because you've got like imposter syndrome and all those things. When actually, if you are more open and honest and real about the mistakes you're making, the team around you will try and help you, support you. And it will also enable them to be more creative, to push the boundaries more.
I think, you're absolutely right. That thing of feeling that one should have all the answers when they're in leadership position, but you know, the whole thing about God, we could all have a whole episode about leadership, couldn't we?
Yeah.
But that thing about just knowing that other people have something to share and give them that ability to feel that they're not treading on people's toes by saying something, and there's that openness to be able to just share ideas. And I like what you say about kind of ideas, kind of 3 ideas coming together.
Yeah.
You know, the friction you get from that is like fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I love that, and I think that spins off into like into the creative space where you know, I think you like 3 concepts presented to a client. Often they say, "Can we have a bit of everything?"
Yeah.
But I think there's something in that. One can criticise that. I think, I gotta say they want to take 2 halves of a book and put it together.
Yeah.
But I think there's something there about maybe these ideas need to be thrown together more to get the best idea.
Yeah. And also with the positioning of any agency, you can become the best in the world. But if you're trying to become the best marketing agency in the world, it's very, very difficult because you're competing against such a wide, you know, the pool is huge. Whereas if you want to become the best social media marketing agency in the world, more achievable. The best social media marketing agency in London, more achievable. Yeah. The best social media marketing agency for pet care or pet companies, then it becomes more achievable. And then you have a defined niche where you can significantly help. You start to get more data back on what their problems are, what the challenges are. You start to become better at delivering a great service. You then produce better case studies. You can then build a process and almost systemize what that looks like to deliver greatness, so that you can start to think more how you expand the business. And that part of the business is running almost like in that kind of like McDonald's framework, where it's just everyone knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's the way I would always think about it, and that's the way we're thinking about it now at Wiser, is how can we become the best at this thing, employer branding, currently. And then that might expand, but that is crucial first. Rather than seeing that shiny object or that new service line or all these new things, is let's nail this consistently for a certain period of time, become known for that, become experts in that, and then once we're at that stage, then look to expand.
Very true. I think as talking to, is it Nick Francis, who co-founder of Casual Films, now Casual, and he's in the US, he's been there for a number of years, and they say in the US there's a term that's used, which is what he's heard a lot, which is niches get riches.
So true.
You know, so you're absolutely in that provides the focus, and then I think then the freedom to kind of play around in that focus, in that lane, so to speak.
Yeah. And then also the secondary byproduct of that is attracting great talent to come and work for you from that sphere.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't want to go and work for a big agency if you're experts in one area.
So when it comes to the things you've seen over the years and things you've seen more recently, and you talk about how in marketing there are things that still remain true.
Yeah.
But when it comes to challenges that you see clients facing, what are those typical challenges? So I think it's good to think about that when we're then going to talk about like how agencies can adapt and grow to address those challenges.
So first and foremost, the 3 big ones. Number one, the one we spoke about, the lack of ability to move quickly because of process, because of I almost think status. Okay. So if you think about your stakeholder within that organisation, whether it's a marketing director or somebody else, if they make a wrong decision, that could be their career.
Yeah,
they might then lose that job, or they might not be favoured for the next promotion, whatever it may be. Yeah. So I think that plays a part as well. Often people will go for the safe or the tried and tested option, when often you'll get outsized returns based on the risk tolerance or the risk level that you're willing to accept.
Okay, yeah.
So I'd say that is number one. Number 2 is, and it's a case in the employer branding space, in the traditional marketing space, is how can you measure success? And so the internet has made things much easier to track. So you can track everything down to the cost per click, cost per engagement, but then that takes somewhat away from the brand or the PRable piece, which again has an important place within marketing. And in order for a message to spread on the internet, you often need that remarkability, that awe, that shock. And so ensuring that you have both of those things, top of the funnel, big brand awareness piece, but mixed with a more defined performance marketing lens.
Yeah.
And they don't have to operate, because you'll get performance marketers who then say, there's no value in brand. And the vice versa, because they're trying to sell their services. Yeah. And the best companies in the world, in my opinion, are the ones that can play both of those games
100%,
very well. And so I say that's a big struggle, is that tracking, and then where to invest and how much to invest in each of those areas. And then the third thing I would say for any big organisation, especially ones that have ambition and trying to scale, is how you can systemize that process, how you work with an agency effectively, how you then get ideas or information or knowledge shared to the right people at the right time. That is, I would say, one of the biggest, even for us in the scale-up agency world, it's the same, everybody faces that problem. Because ultimately we're working with people.
Yeah.
And how you motivate, inspire people, and how you make sure you give them the training and the guidelines so that they can perform at their absolute best is crucial, crucial, crucial. And the way that we always think about it now is, what are we trying to achieve from a vision perspective? Make sure that is inspiring, exciting, drives passion, gets people up every day, motivating, it connects with those people. And those that it doesn't is fine, but if it doesn't, it's good for people to self-select out if they don't want to be on that journey.
Yeah, very true, very true.
So have the big vision, and then tie it back to what you're doing in 3 years' time, what you're doing in a year's time, and then what people are doing in that organisation from a quarter-to-quarter basis to achieve that bigger vision in 10 years. And thinking in 10 years is important.
Yeah.
Because often people only think in a year, 2 year, 3 years. But to have something which is ambitious, Elon, for example, wants to put somebody in space, wants self-driving cars. Think about how many people work for them as a byproduct because they want to be part of doing that, which will take decades.
Totally, yeah.
That's inspiring enough for people to join organisations and for people to really feel like they're on a mission to achieve or to solve something big within the world that we live in. And then bringing it right back to, well, tangibly, me on a hot day in London, on a Friday, when it's sweltering, how does my day-to-day actions, behaviours, the goals that I'm setting myself and the team, how can everybody know that their impact today or this week or this month or this quarter is having an impact on us getting there? And communicating where we are on that journey and that progress line to everybody. So that's transparent communication is there. Went off on a bit of a tangent, but I think that's
good.
important.
No, I think there's this thing about companies can focus too much on the next quarter. You know, I think when you look at it from the client side of things, that connects to the thing about, if I do this, you know, will this marketing director or this employer brand person lose their job?
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's an element of kind of Simon Sinek's infinite game here, isn't there? Which is
so true.
Absolutely have this purpose that's kind of bigger than yourself, but it isn't also doesn't have an end to it. If you become the biggest company, it's like, well, okay, what next? There's a classic thing of the England rugby team in 2003. We've won the World Cup, and then they tanked afterwards. What next? Olympians. What next? When you get that gold. So I think, I I ask myself, okay, if I'm doing this now, is it connected to the reason I set up my business? So that's kind of nice, a nice sense check. So
Great framing.
I think it's really important to do. And in terms of like, how do you balance that thing about, because there's the performance side of things and then there's the branding side of things. Absolutely, you're 100% right. The two deserve to be together, but often people look at either or, don't they?
Yeah.
So how do you balance that thing? If clients are going, well, look, it's about results, how do you get them to think in that way that it is a mixture of the two?
Of both things. So if you look at the traditional funnel, going from awareness down to consideration, down to acquisition, the way I always position it to a client that says that, especially more so if they're an unknown brand. If you're a known brand, you can be more acquisition heavy. If you're Coca-Cola or Nike, people know who you are. You've got brand awareness, you've got a certain amount of brand equity, brand trust, brand loyalty in the market. If you're an unknown or a growing or scaling brand, then it's like that traditional saying where if you ask a girl out on a first date and then you go on the date to the restaurant and then you ask her to marry you, it's almost too full on in a world of distrust anyway. Yeah, true. Especially with all the things that are coming out about Facebook over the past few years, the misuse of data. So then if you're an organisation that doesn't have strong brand presence in market and then you're immediately asking for something, that could almost push customers away. And so a great way to position it is we need a certain amount of brand awareness to tell that narrative. that story as to why you exist,
100%.
who you are, who the characters are. It's like TV and films.
Yeah.
People need to buy into you, into the founder story, into what you're trying to achieve, the purpose and mission. So you need to get that across in the awareness and the consideration phase. And then you can start selling people on, if they've not already purchased through that, then it's like, then the benefits of the product.
Yeah.
And we're working with On Running, great brand. They're now building awareness everywhere. There's, stocks. I was in shopping in London yesterday. They're in every retailer now. The story's very powerful. They've had the investment from Federer over the years.
Okay, yeah, nice.
And then when you then start because if they just went to market straight away just on the cloud technology, and there was none of that other story and what they're trying to create, that would be very hard to then push out a Nike or an Adidas in market.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's even the Coca-Colas and Nikes of the world, they know that they constantly have to be looking at that, at the awareness piece, because it's new awareness for new people, but also it's different awareness when you're faced with different challenges from
100%
from competitors.
And the one point on that I'd always mention is, not all awareness is great. So if you put out like the Pepsi ad with, was it Kendall or Kylie Jenner?
Oh yes, yeah.
Not all awareness is going to be good for the organisation, for the stock price, for people wanting to buy your products or associate with your product. Because a lot of human nature is we'll buy products based on how it will make us look. Yeah. It's a reflection of our own personal brand.
Exactly.
What you're wearing, what you're eating, restaurants you go, places you go and visit. So if you have negative connotations which are widespread through a brand awareness negative play, then that also isn't good. People say, oh, well, all media's...
any publicity is good publicity.
It's good publicity, yeah. It's like, to a certain extent, depending on what you're trying to achieve, like Thursday, for example, they can almost push the boundary more because that's the nature of the product.
Yes.
They can be more tongue-in-cheek, they take more risks. But if you're then a product which somebody then buys, it's then kind of goes into that status symbol play, then you've got to be really careful about the positioning.
I suppose then going back to the thing about working with clients and get them to see that balance between the two is also about understanding their environment. Talk about understanding the target audience and having empathy for the target audience. Have empathy for the client. That balance between pushing them going, well, I'm here to give you advice, to going, well, but I know that they are in a company that is facing a number of challenges. So it's about finding that right balance to make them do something that is right for them, but also right for the campaigns that they're running.
Yeah.
I think in particular, that you can talk about funnels. I think actually it's really interesting. It's kind of how you frame it. It's things like how you frame awareness. Yeah. Is framing awareness as actually fundamentally important to the business, and I think maybe doesn't happen enough because it's the bottom of the funnel that is so focused on, because we have this performance marketing world where everything can be tracked. But I try and reframe it myself and flip it. In fact, I even found a Minions GIF which had a pyramid that was upside down. It flips it around, so it's a pyramid instead of a funnel, because you have that foundation of awareness. If you don't have that foundation, you don't have anything else at all.
So true. The awareness piece is important, and I always think about a brand at that awareness phase when you're speaking to a client. It's like, what would somebody on the street say about you if you weren't listening? What are they saying in the gym or in the pub or at the family dinner table about your brand? What's that one liner or that conversation? That is your brand reputation in market. And so how can you influence that through those phases, that awareness, that consideration phase, through really powerful storytelling, ultimately?
Yeah, and coming up with content that actually is not just about yourself. That's where I think content marketing is so important, where, it's going back to your point about all of a sudden asking the date to marry you on the first date. It's just is a bit too desperate, and they're not interested in that. So to come up with that content that's actually going to add value beyond the value of, well, I'm purchasing this product, or I am going to get this job that's going to add value to my life. It's actually what brands are in a position to help their people, basically help their customers and their future employees. But I say that could be another episode, but I think
Yeah.
let's now get we talked about the challenges, facing organisations, facing clients and organisations. When it comes to like looking at an agency that, is built for the modern day, kind of what does an agency need to do to stay relevant? Because their agencies have been around for a long time, for a number of years, but also for decades. What does an agency need to do now in this decade to stay relevant to the market that they're serving for their clients?
I would say build a service that is a painkiller, not a vitamin.
Yes, yeah, nice, love it.
So
yeah, good.
Like if I think about why Social Chain was successful and why Wise is the same, or we're getting there at least, is we are solving a real pain. Like social chain was, social media had come on the scene 2014, 2015. People didn't understand it. Marketing directors didn't understand it. It was this unsafe brand environment. And we were, at that time, the kids on the internet that knew how to make anything go viral, that knew everything about groups, about the platforms, about the content you need to produce. So as a byproduct, you're going to go to those people because they're native, they understand it. The same way with Wiser now, we've just been through the pandemic for 2 years. There's more people out of work than the jobs that are available. I don't know if you saw that stat the other day.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy.
Organisations are really struggling to attract talent because historically they've been able to rely on brand. They've been oversubscribed for people wanting to work for that company. And so they've never had to work on the what's in it for me. So again, that's now a real pain, which is at C-suite board level discussions. And that's the positioning of how we as an agency, and also tied to our mission to change the way people think about work, to make work something that's fulfilling and not a transactional piece of your life because you spend so much time there. That's something that everybody at our company believes in and is on a mission to try and change. And that ties in with what's happened recently with that big seismic shift. So I would say make sure whatever you're building service-wise isn't just an addition or a nice to have, is something that's going to seriously transform or solve a big pain that's keeping people up at night.
Business critical, making it business critical.
Exactly.
Isn't it? I think interesting when I was, we see a lot of each other on LinkedIn, but due diligence before the episode, and I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and something stood out for me in particular, which is the Gallup State of the Global Workplace report that said how low employee engagement was. Yeah. And that's actually one of the reasons I set up the podcast, and I have it as kind of a big part of the intro of my podcast, is it's like only 21% of employees globally are engaged, and that's $8 trillion. $8 trillion in lost productivity. Yeah. If finding and retaining the right talent isn't important for business, I don't know what it is. And also the thing about it shouldn't be too much to ask that more people love their jobs or are at least happier in their jobs.
Exactly.
Not just 21% of them. Crazy.
Exactly, you hit the nail on the head. So also the impact from a business perspective is great, but really that's not what gets us out of bed in the morning. Like the impact of that person, if they're hating work and they go home and they've got 2 kids, then the impact on the kids, their partner, then that whole environment on the wider society when they go and play in their sports team, or if they go and do whatever outside of work, that has such a big impact on the wider society, their perspective, their mindsets on life, why you're here, what am I doing, why am I doing all this? And so that's what, imagine if we could change that, or at least shift it for the next generation. So for our kids growing up, work's seen as I can't wait to go to work.
Yeah, that's true.
Like when you're younger and I can't wait to, certain subjects light you up. I can't wait to go and do that. Can't wait to go and play. I was into sports. I couldn't wait to go and play sports or do PE or any of the creative or marketing things. I was like, I can't wait to go and do that. Yeah. And I think we've got a way to go from the education world, people coming out of school, people coming out of university, and then helping people understand what makes them tick. Like I said earlier about my personality type, that should just be a standard thing to or self-reflect at key stages throughout your life, so you know what to watch out for, what jobs shouldn't you go into, based on you, not based on what your parents think or what your teacher thinks, based on you, what gives you energy, not necessarily what you're good at. Because I was always told, oh, you just focus on what you're good at. I was good at history. I'm like, but that doesn't give me energy. So then you tend to focus on the subjects and the topics, and you go into careers that because you're good at that. But then if you're good at that, but you don't like doing it, it's almost a weakness. Because you're doing something all the time. You might be good at it, but it's draining you, and you're not feeling fulfilled. Yeah. And I think just little shifts like this, and even how you build an office, a culture like we're doing at Wiser, it's with the happiness team, with the employee engagement initiatives, recognition. Now we're trying to build more around L&D and training to get everyone up so they can progress, earn more, feel more fulfilled, feel more accomplished, do the things that they want to achieve in their career. I think focusing on those things more will impact that stat across the long term, much more than the, say, pool tables and the slides and the somewhat superficial things, which are still important because it gives you a sense of, like if you've got a pool table or a table tennis table, it's not that. It's the sense of belonging where you can go to that with a colleague and it not be weird.
I have the freedom to do it. I have autonomy over it.
And then you can start speaking about other topics. You can start speaking about what happened on the weekend. Whereas if you just have a work environment, office environment with desks, which doesn't have that thought process in place about how can people collaborate, connect, engage with each other, that workplace planning, the physical design, I think is a really important thing. Yeah. And most companies don't think about that. They just buy an office, put desks in. But that in and of itself is important, especially when we've got a hybrid workplace where people are coming in at different times too.
Totally. I think, it's not looking at square footage and not looking at it going, well, because open plan offices, I think, the biggest collaboration con out there has never been about collaboration. Yeah. And I think, you're right, in terms of like how agencies adapt, and a lot of agencies are doing this, but more need to, is really looking at the office space now. Yeah. And actually getting rid of the kind of the hot desk, lined up hot desks. Yeah. And actually going, right, we're going to have sofas there, sofas in front of a whiteboard. Yeah. All this thing about actually people sitting together, because if you're just going to go to the office and sit in front of your computer and have Zoom calls while you're in the office, So I think that's a really interesting space for agencies is how you build that space, because that is down to happiness at work, but also how you, going back to your ideas about the different ideas, 3 ideas coming together, how do you facilitate that?
Exactly that. And also to different personality types, because ideally you don't just want all ENFJs, you want people who are blue or red or yellow in your environment, and people that are introverts, people that are extroverts. And it's very difficult. I would say that's the hardest thing when you're hiring. Natural human tendency is to want to hire people like you. Yes, yeah. Because that's what your friendship group are like. It's probably usually what your parents are like because you've grown up in that environment. When actually, if you can hire someone based on their culture fit and based on their ability to do the role, and then create that environment where, for an introvert, you might need more pods set up where they can go and close off and not have to have the open plan office. But making sure for every type of person, there's an inclusive environment so that you've at least thought about it. Yeah. And the hardest thing is if you're not from that background, like if you don't have kids, for example, if you're not from a different cultural background, we're planning Black History Month. We have been for the last 3 or 4 months. My background's or heritage is Ghanaian. Okay, and there's loads of different nuances just from speaking to the other people from different places in Africa within our team, that we've come up with loads of great ideas about what we can do throughout that month. But without having that or putting ourselves in that forum to explore and to be curious about those ideas, then you might have just gone with the standard food, the standard music, the standard events or things that you're going to do. And so the more that you can do that as an agency to try and ask other people, to find out about other religions, to find out about other cultures, to find out about people from different backgrounds that are different to you, I think that's crucial to making your organisation successful.
Exactly, because it's as you say, easy to kind of that hiring for culture fit. What does that mean? It's like, so there is that danger of just hiring people that are the same, all the same. And there's a Matthew Syed's book called
Rebel Ideas.
Rebel Ideas, and he talks about how true diversity is so important. He talks about the CIA and how they absolutely missed the 9/11 because they recruited great people, but they were all the same. And having people from different cultures brings different perspectives. And I think that's something that is challenging for agencies, to do, especially when there's that demand to get someone. We need to get someone in to manage that client, to deal with that project. But I think actually the thing about, having that kind of Simon Sinek infinite game type thing about, say, like changing the world of work, when people are going, that's a bit of me, then there's that chance that they're connected with that as opposed to connecting with a type of person.
Two things there. Connected to the purpose, crucial. Like the changing the way people think about work, people connect to that. People can relate to it. They've been through it. They've been in those jobs that they hated. But I think second, which we didn't do in social change until a bit later on, which we would have done earlier if we were to do it again, and what we've done amazingly at Wiser, is codify our values. So now we've got, and I think anywhere between 3 to 6, more than 6 is too much, but we've got 5 at Wiser, we have 3 at Social Chain, and actually hiring people based on what they are. And they are actionable things. So ours are make moves, take ownership, things like that, which are more verbs, not one words. They're things that you can actually do. And then asking in the interview process, where have you made some significant moves in your career, or which projects have you really taken ownership over the last 5 years? And then you can tangibly see if somebody is going to fit in well with this culture and really take themselves to the next level.
100%. Lovely. Well, I say we could chat for much longer. It's been great catching up and great shooting the breeze with you. But thanks very much, and we'll catch up later on.
See you soon.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.